Welcome to the Reaching In podcast. My name is Ross. I'm your host. To give you some background about me, I am a poet. I am a writer, a musician. I've studied psychology at the University of Sheffield and a bit of neuroscience, and that will give you some context as to where my ideas and interests come from. Today, my guests are the lovely Bethan and Katya of Sounding Body. And I met these two brilliant ladies through their work, which is quite difficult to describe, actually. I'm sure they'll do a better job of it than I can, but it's powerful stuff. So, yeah, would you like to introduce yourself and your work? Do you want to start, Bethan?
Oh, me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was just nodding then when you were saying it's quite difficult to describe because it really is, and we've just spent the last few weeks really trying to put it into words, and some of it is quite beyond words, I'd say, but we try our best. But essentially, we're exploring embodied voice, so a way of vocal expression that is completely embodied and not just kind of with the mind and thinking I need to sound great and I need to sound this exact way, but dropping in and experiencing ourselves as a whole and expressing from that place. And with that, knowing that there are a million different voices and a million different songs to sing.
Awesome. Katya?
Yeah, it's this sort of process of like coming into a relationship with our voice, which is sort of there to teach us. It's like what is this thing that I have, and what are all the different ways that it can move through my body, and what happens when I use my voice in this way? Like, what are the sensations? What's the space that's created? Like, all of these questions that we have and have had. And Bethan and I started really going into this work together just with these questions of like, we start making these sounds, we start moving in this way, and what's happening? Like, how is our experience changing? So we've just really been on this journey together of like trying to figure out what the process of like deconstructing this practice is, and then like how can we teach that to other people? How can we bring people into this experience? Because we were having such profound experiences ourselves when we were together, and then to bring that into like a workshop context or a retreat context or even just like an individual context has sort of been our work over the past few years. And as you were there for the 5-day
Yes.
retreat in Kaimabon.
Yeah, that was yeah, your work and that retreat was a sort of experiential study of what the voice is. Among other things, it was an amazing community experience, and seeing how song and ritual can create bonds very quickly and deeply between fairly large groups. So could you go a bit into what experiences brought you to this point where you'd had such profound experiences with your voices that you wanted to share that with other people?
Yeah, I can start. I started to compose music when I was about 21, but I'd been singing my whole life because I'm Welsh, and it's a part of the culture to sing from when you're really young. And it was the most exciting feeling to feel like I could write my own music, because I'd always loved music. And then I was just like, oh my God, I can make it. I can make music. And it was almost like too exciting, and I went right into this slipstream of thinking like, oh my God, now I can sell my music, become an artist, and like become famous, or whatever that general narrative is once you start making music. And that all just actually made me really stuck. And all of a sudden I found myself not really being able to compose anything or even have the deep desire to write anymore, because the intention behind me making music was a little bit like skew whiff. So I was finding that I was writing things that I wasn't really feeling. So then I was like, right, I need to go on a big journey. And I'd studied theology and religious studies at uni. I'd always been interested in spirituality, and I suppose I just went like deeper and deeper into it. And through various sort of life experiences, then I found myself really interested in states of trance, and like how we can like deepen that experience of like losing that thinking part of the mind and just creating from like just being in a space of complete surrender. And when I got there and I started to make music from there, not only did it feel like absolutely incredible, but I also started to make things that I was like, this is cool and this sounds like me, or beyond me, you know. And that's when I was like, right, this is, you know, this isn't an experience which is only for musicians, one, but this is also an experience for musicians. So it was kind of like, how do we go deeper into sound and music, that it's not just this packaged entertainment thing anymore. It's what it probably always was, which is this sacred thing that we share between all humans. And like you said, how easy is it to actually improvise in a group of people? So easy. Give us an hour and everybody will be improvising together. Less. Give me 5 minutes and I'll have you having a jam.
Well,
I can attest to that.
Exactly. You know, Ross, you were there when like you have a group of 16 people, maybe only 2 of whom claim to be technically musicians, and by the end of the 5 days everyone has become the music. Like every single human being is just allowing the music to move through them in complete harmony and coherence with each other, in a way which is just, you know, that's transformational. Like you suddenly remember like, oh, this is what we are, this is what we're capable of. Like I don't have to sit down and write a song. I can allow song to move through me in relation to a whole collection of people. And that's like such a deep remembering, to just suddenly be in that space of like allowing this creative like flow to just move through. You know? And yeah, and like with Bethan and I, the sort of the work was really like, when we were going into this space together, it felt like we were cleaning our body of like resistance with sound. You know, we were like, okay, if we can get past this idea of good and bad, right and wrong, like black and white thinking, what happens when you start to make sound from that place? And often it would just be these really disgusting like sounds that we're making at the same time, and we're going into that place of resistance together. We're like, let's go into the mud, like let's swim in there and see what's in there. And we're going and we're moving, and then finally you hit that point where you're like, oh, there's space, there's like a clarity, yeah. And then it drops, and then the music comes through. And you know, it's like this sort of like deconstruction of this process of getting back to the core of like what we are through sound with our own voice, and then allowing music to just come through us. And it works every time. It works. And like the fact that we've become so removed from using this tool that we all have, you know, it's like it's right here. You don't have to go anywhere, you don't have to spend any money, you know, you just like, you've got it, you've got your body and you've got your voice. And like to not really like try and find the edges of what it can do seems like a waste. It seems like a missed opportunity for us as humans at the moment.
So before I went to one of your workshops for the first time, I had sort of intuitively come across this practice of sounding. You can call it just because I've been interested in meditation for a while, and you know, eventually what meditation has led to for me, and I think this is true for a lot of people, is you start to undo the lid on your repressed, bottled emotions. And you know, so that stuff starts to come up if you commit to a meditative path. And that's quite a difficult place to be in when you haven't been prepared and you've been given this sort of consumerist ideal of mindfulness, which is it's just to make you feel less stressed. It's not what it's about. And it does start to unearth and uncover these really powerful traumas in a lot of cases. So at that point in my path, my spiritual path, I began to just go out into the woods near me and make these disgusting sounds, scream, you know, probably terrifying poor people who happened to be walking in the path, in the park at that time. But, you know, I needed to do it because there was so much stuck energy that needed to move through me. And as you say, it was partly these sort of guttural, sort of more just the noises I needed to make to move the energy. But then once it was moved, then the space opened up, and yeah, then these more beautiful or conventionally beautiful tones would come up, more harmonious tones would come out. And on a bigger scale, I noticed the more I would go and really give vocal sound to what I was feeling, the richer and more harmonic my voice would become in all aspects of life. I could like feel my voice in more of my body than before. So that was pretty lonely for me to just have by myself. So when I went to a workshop and you guys have kind of systematically gone through this yourself, and you've got this very, I think you might disagree with this word, but streamlined way to communicate to people, because it's all about flow and surrender, but it does feel like you've got a system behind it. And being in that space with lots of other people who were clearly experiencing the same benefits that I was, it was just really deeply nourishing and gave me a sense of belonging. And it just makes me wonder whether this is, well, something that we've all forgotten. You know, you've used the words, Katia, remembering, and you know, and you, Bethan, you know, this is something that we are. So yeah, is this something which, well, yeah, like this is something which is within us waiting to come out. And some cultures are still in touch with this, right? Some indigenous cultures. And am I right in thinking that you have experience with these cultures? Have you been with have you spent time with humans who still have deep embodied communal connection with this way of using the voice?
My ex-partner is from a tribe, the Pataxó, on the east coast of Brazil. So I lived there with them for some time, and that was a really incredible experience to be immersed in a place where song was just still a daily part of life. And there was a lot of mirrors really to my experience of growing up in Wales, where people do sing quite a lot, but here it was just like, this is the main form of entertainment. You know, they're not actually, they do have phones and TVs there, but they're not like as kind of engrossed in entertainment and going clubbing and like and watching TV and watching box sets and things like that. It's kind of like, yeah, we sing and we dance and we still hold space for that and still honor that and still honor what that also brings in. And that was kind of one of my first experiences of seeing people, like they call it incorporamento, which is like when you channel and you allow something into your body. And they do a full moon ritual every month where they allow the spirits, the caboclos, to come into their bodies, which is their ancestral spirits, and they dance in formation, and they actually all sing the same songs together. And then you just like witness this energy just like building and building, and it's just, I mean, it's electric. I don't think I've ever experienced anything like it really before that. And that for me kind of sparked this like, wow, okay, what is that, and did we have that here? Because I'd spent a lot of my life traveling the world really and learning from different traditions, and then that was when I was like, I need to come back and I need to learn about the history of the British Isles. So that's when I started to look a bit further into Druidic practice, and I learned that voice was one of the main ways that the main thing that they used in order to go into trance and in order to journey. So there wasn't so much signs of drumming here. So there was like, people would gather more in circles and kind of create sound. And I mean, this is as far as we know, right? Or as far as we can intuit and remember when we tune in, because it was an oral tradition, so we don't have all the information. But I believe that they would sing together and they would kind of unpick and open up spaces, and possibly the same, they would allow ancestors to come through, or information, or, you know, just connect as a community, to create transformation within that community. So I don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah, I mean,
Where did we start?
yes, it
I'm
does.
just improvising here with my
Yeah.
words.
Yeah, and Katya, you've I think had some experience with Eastern European indigenous oral cultures, right?
Yeah, well, my mum is Polish, and it was a few years back now. I like started to hear the folk songs of Eastern Europe, and they just like, it was again just that remembering. I was like, I need to hear those songs. I need to sing those songs. Not even I need to hear those songs. It was also this like, why am I not? You know, okay, I was born in England, in the UK, but there's like, it felt like there was a part of me that had not been like nourished at all. And so I went on an expedition around Ukraine and Poland and Russia, and I was going to the local villages and just finding the grandmas. You know, you can just enter a village there and just be like, where are the singing grandmas? And they're like, over there. And then you go, and they're still, you know, they're still singing these songs, and they don't know where they came from. They don't know how old they are. A lot of them are like pre-Christian, and they're just singing them, and they're singing them, and they come together, and they like, often the women will be singing together, and they're just passing on. They're like, here are the songs, and they know that, you know, the younger generations come and they pass on the songs, but it is something that is dying. I mean, people are like, they're sort of striving to document these songs just to keep them alive, but it's not happening so much anymore. But it was, yeah, an incredibly transformational experience, because you just have to sort of be near them to like feel how ancient these songs are. Like when they're singing them, you just have to stand there, and you're receiving all of that information from their voices when they're coming through. And when you ask them how they do it as well, you're like, so how do you sing like that? And they're like, what do you mean, you just sing? And you're like, oh yeah, obviously you just sing. And there's not this process so much of like needing to remember, because they're still doing it, and they're still doing it every day. And you know, it's a funny thing to sort of like talk about the voice as something that we've forgotten, because we are still speaking every day. You know, we're using our voice, and we're speaking, saying things. And I'm sure loads of people sing in the shower. It seems to be the space in which it's acceptable to still do that. But there is this sense of like this fear around just like opening your mouth and letting sound that isn't necessarily just like the monotone of speaking come through. And I think that's what's so interesting, or was so interesting for me, is the question of like, why has it become something that we're so afraid of doing? Like, if it's something that's so natural to us, why are we so afraid of just opening our mouths in this way? And like, it feels like there's sort of all of these like masks and these layers that we wear, and these stories that we wear in order to fit into some societal construct. And as we do that, like the sound of our voice seems to like disappear over time. And like then, like, you know, when we're working with the voice, we're also working with all these stories and all these beliefs that are in the way of like, why can I not express myself from a place that feels like is my own, that isn't someone telling me how I should sound or what I should do. It's just like, oh, this is my voice and this is my expression here in the world. And yeah, like it seems particularly stuck here, like here as in the West, let's call it that, like where we are. We have seemed to have built quite a lot of layers of abstraction that are sort of in the way before we can start to hear that place. And like Bethan said, you know, going into these more sort of what we might call trance states sort of allows this like breaking down of like the things that are there. A bit of control loosens, a bit of surrender, and you start to like actually feel that sensation again that I think we all had it as children. I do think that it sort of gets broken at some point, and then it gets filled with something else. So, but this is just my, you know, my theorizing around it, and like my experience, and everyone's will be different.
Something which I realized through doing this work, with myself, and because I do think it's playful. It is childlike and curious. It's just a good way to spend your time and energy, just discovering what your voice is, letting it do what it wants to. But
Yeah.
I found a difficulty that I had with getting to a more natural and free expression was that I didn't want to express the parts of me which didn't want to express themselves, if you know what I mean. So there are like parts of me which I don't want to express, but that's an expression. That sort of half that half wanting to be out and half wanting to be in is an expression in itself, right? So yeah, I feel like a big part of why we tend to get so stuck in our, well, just not able to express ourselves, stuck in non-expression, is we don't want to allow ourselves to be seen as this victim of a culture and society which is actually strangled that out of us.
Sure. And I think, like, go on, Beth.
Yeah, go.
Okay, there's like sort of such a the repeated thing that we see when we're working with groups of people is like, when you start to say, like, you can make any sound and it doesn't matter, like we're not trying to do anything that's like good or like sounds in any way, and the freedom that comes from being like, I can be ugly, like I can be gross, I can be grotesque, I can do something that it's like, yeah, back to that sort of like the sounds of resistance, like to actually allow yourself to be okay about being in resistance, and then like letting that come through with sound. And the sort of sound is such like I would call it like a pure way of expressing something. Like words also can be quite abstract, but if you just come to sound, you can say so much from just like, there's like so much information in that, and you don't have to get stuck in the stories so much. So yeah, I think that like the allowing of like what is there and then letting it be heard is like extremely powerful work, and so simple, so simple.
It is simple, but it's like the information isn't there to to us, when it's like the I guess this could extend beyond the voice to the world and to life itself. There's a lot of information there which we aren't able to tune into because we're all stuck in the abstract, and it's like we have these words which help us make these precise and elaborate theories, but it's like the more we're there, the less we're able to extract the information from life itself. So there's this process of sounding and allowing that, playful, pure, intuitive mode of expressing information. Can that help us change our relationship to just the world itself and life itself?
Well, I think the more you give yourself permission to let go and to be entirely yourself and to really go into those places, even like the places that you're talking about, the places where you're like, oh, I don't want to show that, and to go into that, it really does translate into life, because you kind of come out of that practice. And I think one of the common things that we hear actually is the effect that this work of sounding has on people's lives in many different ways. Like they find their purpose, they actually go for their dream work, they they speak their mind more with their partner or with their family, people that they've felt like they can't speak to, or even that they're aware more of when to be silent, as in like when to give space within conversation and to listen, because this is a practice of sounding and of listening. So it's like it's allowing that flow to go through the entirety of life. So it really is the kind of practice that you can put in to your everyday life. It's not just about becoming, so like, yes, you can move deeper and deeper into levels of surrender and different types of sound. I hope that continues for our entire life, because that's really fun. But it's really, what it actually really is about is how it makes us feel after, and how it connects us to each other because we've been sounding together, and how it connects us to ourselves, and how it helps us know ourselves and what we really want in every moment.
Mm. It's a great reflection of your inner state, because there's a song that we learned at the retreat, and it's the Peter A. Boyd one, and I've noticed that depending on how I'm handling my emotions, I can't hit the lowest note if I'm in like a bad place. If I've got some bullshit I'm not dealing with, and I'm all tangled up inside, I can't hit the lowest note. But then sometimes when I'm feeling more just on top of what's going on within me, and I'm more calm, I can hit that. I can hit that, and I can hit it with different levels of ease depending on where I'm at. So it's incredible. It's just yeah, it's strange that we've lost track of something which can be so revelatory to who we are and where we're at. How would you recommend to someone who wants to begin this process of using their voice in a way to feel more confidence and more freedom and more self-awareness to begin?
Well, I think what you were just explaining there is a really good starting place, which is basically just seeing your voice as a mirror or as a teacher, and knowing that there is no moment where it's going to tell you the same thing. So, you can sit down one day and you can tone in a way that's low and deep. Maybe it's in your, maybe it's deep in your root or your pelvis or your feet, wherever you're feeling it. And it will give you completely different information to if you did that half an hour later or the next day. Or like you say, sometimes for me, I get it's really difficult for me to reach high notes when I'm just like sitting in a certain way, and I have to move my body in order to allow those notes to actually come through. And all of that is information about what my internal process is at that moment in time. So like, just being curious and being like, okay, playing with what the sensation of sound is inside the body. And then if any other information is there, like, it doesn't have to necessarily have meaning in a way of like an answer, but it can have meaning in a way of just like more questions about what that experience is like for you in that moment. Like, is it painful, is it pleasurable, is it like, is something moving or is something landing? And like these sort of descriptive ways of naming a kind of the sensation of sound in your body, and then continuing with that, and really trying to get past the idea of needing to sing well. It's so important. It's like the core of the work. Like, we're not trying to be good singers. That might happen, like, it does happen, but that's not the purpose of it. It's like, I am curious about what my voice wants to teach me, and I want to listen to what's there, and knowing that it's never going to be the same. It's always going to be different.
So, having done this work with a lot of people, do you find that there are particular emotions and sounds associated with different parts of the body, or is it all very unique to the individual?
I think it's a bit of both, really. There are definitely some sounds, and the more we do it, the more we're like, oh yeah, there's that sound that means that thing. And then there's some that are just like completely unique to each person. It's a complete mixed bag.
because when we did the workshop, it was, you were leading the workshop, the sound, and you weren't there, Katia, but you did this meditation where we all did a sound for a different area of the body. And I noticed they were all separate sounds and sounded different, and there was a lot of discord. But when we made the sound for the heart, I realized that everyone's sounds were harmonized, which I just thought was really cool.
And that might have been true in that workshop in Manchester, but that might be completely different another day. And that is actually one of the most fascinating things about this work, is how different it can be from one group to another. But there's definitely like a place from which everyone's coming from. I can tell the quality of heart. It might not be the exact same sound, but there's like, oh yeah, you can. There's a resonance in that sense, that you can feel where everyone is coming from. But yeah, there's definitely a difference from when you work from the toes and you get right up to the top of the head. There are similar types of characters, let's call it that come through.
I suppose that's to do.
Sorry, yeah, I was just going to say about the sort of the difference in quality of emotions. I think the experience that I have is not necessarily like, sure, it's in different parts of the body, but it's more, yeah, like Bethan says, it's like it's the quality of the sound that's coming through. And you know, when we do the sort of working through the emotions where you're just going from neutral and then into joy and then into anger, you're singing the same note. So like actually the note is exactly the same, but the place that it's coming from changes, and you can really feel, especially when you're standing in a circle and doing that, you can really feel the difference in the quality of like, okay, my intention of the emotion has changed. I'm doing it, like it's not taking over me, I'm doing it, and I'm like, I'm the one who is allowing this emotion through my sound and bringing it into the center of a circle. Yeah, and how it sort of it shifts. It's like, you know, again, like we've got all these words that we use, but it's really just about the felt experience of what's happening and like where it's coming from, and then when it's all shared, and like the shifting quality of those sounds when they're in sort of in relation to an emotion. And then there's also, Bethan and I find lots of like when we go into like the elements work, like we've sort of, in our way of sounding between us two, and again it will be different for different groups of people or different individuals, but like there is a sound for the earth, and it always, there's like a song that is the song of the earth that comes through when we're singing it, and it feels like, you know, she's singing in this way, and it always comes back in that way. But it's only after years of doing this together that we've like actually just it was the other day, wasn't it, Beth? Like, well, that's the earth, like
that's definitely it. Yeah, then you could be like, it's definitely that.
Yeah, because it's happened so many times, but we only just named it. Before we were just like, you know, allowing through whatever was coming through, and then suddenly it was like, oh, that is actually our communication with our human body, our communication with the earth, and this is what it sounds like when we are singing.
Yeah, and I think it's important how you say that it's like our story, right? So we can attach different stories to like all these different sounds, and people have throughout centuries, and that's how we have different religions, is you have like different stories attached to different experiences, and they can be really useful. I think quite often in our work when we're sharing it, we try to drop stories as much as possible, although we might have our own personal ones and our personal experiences of what things might be. That's what's so amazing about this practice, is that it can be universal, because we all might be feeling the same thing, right? So that everybody might be in this space of, let's say, earth, but we don't have to call it that, because we just sense it. We're just in the same sound, and we're just in the same like sensation, and in the same kind of frequency and bubble. It's like a sound bubble somehow that's made, and when that synchronicity really happens between people.
Now, this work is not so easy to do in a big scale at the moment, and you've got a way of bringing this to people who are in isolation. Do you want to tell us a bit about that, Katya?
Yeah, sure. We have just finished completing we've made a 6-week online course. We have recorded a sort of series of movement and voice exercises, and then we have also created what we have named the sonic ceremonies, which all came about. I mean, all of this came about. We had this question, like, how do we translate something that is completely live and in the moment, that's like different every time you have different people, improvised singing and sound? Like, how on earth can you make that digital? And then, like, you know, a year goes by, people are still in their homes, we're still not able to do this work with people, so we're like, well, let's just improvise something, see what happens. And so yeah, so we've sort of combined let's call them embodied practices with these sonic ceremonies, which Bethan's partner Isaac created with us. And it's like each ceremony is related to a specific theme. Each week has a different theme, and we have combined like our voices, our human voice, with electronic frequencies and music. And in this ceremony, we're sort of inviting people to sound with the drone. So like you would when we're all standing in a circle and we're droning and we're holding someone in the center, this is now a sort of like individual way of being able to do this. So you're doing it on your own, but you're still feeling held by this sort of human sound and human voice, with also these electronic frequencies. And then again, what happens when you start sounding in this way and moving things through your body in this way and being held by this music. And so it's partly an experiment in a way, you know, everything we're doing, but yeah, they are there to hold, they're there to hold the individual experience, so you don't feel like you're just alone. You know, you can read a book or something and you can practice something and you're sort of alone doing it, whereas this is like you can be with us in some sense.
And each of these frequencies correspond with different parts of the body, which is also kind of working with the different themes that we do each week. And we stood and sounded this same note, but with the intention of being very in tune with that own part of our body, but also kind of like exploding ourselves out so that we could be in tune with every single person that would ever do the course, which was an incredible experience. That evening where we recorded all those drones will be one of the best evenings of my life, because I was just like, by the end we were flying.
Yeah, it's powerful. Do you wanna run through what the themes are? Just what are the themes of your course?
So there's 5 themes. We have clearing. Number 1 is clearing, so sort of this process of clearing the body with sound, with our voice. Then we have play, where we come back into the sort of state of curiosity and being playful and being non-judgmental. Then we go into the emotional body, and we start sounding with our emotions. And then we hit grief. We haven't even spoken about grief yet. So like grief work is a big part of the voice work as well, like you know, like you were in the retreat. So we're sort of going down deep into the pelvis, and we're feeling what it's like to move with this emotion, quite heavy, maybe darker emotion. And then we go into week 5, which is ancestors, and we sort of visualize and sing with our ancestors. And then we end with a celebration, just to make it a bit lighter by the end.
Yeah.
And that process is sort of like in the retreat. It's a very similar sort of journey that we go on, but we've broken it down into this structure for people to sort of follow.
Awesome. And the reason we have that structure is that that's what we've observed also naturally happens every time with every group. You know, that it's like you go, play is such an amazing way into trance, because it's like remembering how you were as a child, and children just play naturally. So, and you know, and then that kind of allows a little bit of like, you know, you're not feeling so self-conscious, so you're feeling a little bit more comfortable to explore like the emotional body, which when you go really deep into that, inevitably brings up stickier, more intense emotion of grief. And like expressing grief sort of makes space to kind of be able to open up our awareness to perhaps other spirits and other beings that might be around. And the ancestors, in my experience, are some of the the spirits that are most kind of they're just there, actually. They're just there, and if you allow yourself to just tap in a playful and curious way, and you can think it's true or not true, it doesn't really matter either way, but they kind of like having broken down or gone through all this experience, it just allows that curiosity to just be more like present, and for them to just be able to come through easier. And that is obviously just like extremely joyful, so then we tend to have a big party. But I think what we realize on the retreats, right, is that it tends to just have these like as well, that it's like you go really into the stuff, and that just kind of explodes a load of celebration. And like the more you go into the grief, and the more you like unearth all this stuff, the more you're like and there's like more space to play. So it's kind of like these are the layers, but they also like really in real life is sort of like weave in and out of each other.
That's how you were describing the process individually, Katia, of the sounds of resistance, and then the space opening up, and then the more harmonious tones coming through. And you've described the exact same thing, but on a group scale. So it's really beautiful to see that microcosm and macrocosm coming through.
Yeah, I mean, the whole practice was totally emergent from like really just being in the question of what are we doing if we're not trying to be anything, like if we're not trying to sound in any way, what happens? And like it really was the structure came through the exploration and observing the work and doing it so much in our own research, and like then and you know, even in its form, it's so fluid and it's so open. Like it is still different every time there's a different group of people, and will be different every time someone does it. And that's like really important to remember, that we're not trying to get anywhere, we're not trying to get to the end or anything, and there isn't one. So we're still exploring, and it's like encouraging as many people to also ask these questions, and like, you know, report back, like let's see what other people are experiencing. Like, is it maybe similar, is it completely different? It's all really interesting.
Yeah So that's just it's a lot to take in. I need to take a breather. So where can people find this online course? How can they access it?
soundingbody.com/online-course.
Awesome. I will link that in the description.
Also, just something that I wanted to mention as well, is that we are doing a collective scream, and we are hoping to basically create a moment where we all sort of tap into this space of like what's been stuck for us over this period of lockdown and life. You know, you can go back as far as you want to go, and like to bring it through in a collective scream where we are all making the sound together, and then we're going to go into a grief drone. So we're going to have the electronic drone where people can then go into their own sounding journey together, which is going to be live. And yeah,
free.
we are sort of, and free, and we just want to share that experience as widely as possible. So there will be more information on that as well soon. We're just in the process of doing all the logistical things, which is, you know.
Yeah, when you've sorted that out, let me know, and I will include that also in the description for this.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you wanna add about your work, or just what's going on for you?
I'm just about to release an album.
Oh.
An album, yeah. Awesome.
And me and Katia have some music as well as our online course. So if people want to like listen to our music, we made an album just last year now, isn't it? And it was made 24 hours and edited the next day. So it's an entirely improvised album that was just sort of like just came out of us, didn't it?
I love how that's so core to what you guys do. Is improvised album, improvised workshop, improvised podcast. It's just yeah, you guys are doing some good stuff. I think people will really benefit from taking up that course, and hopefully, well, yeah, when things open up, getting together in the physical space and making some sound.
Yeah, we miss it so
Yeah.
much. Like, you
Yeah.
know, uh, it's cool to like see what technology can offer, but it definitely doesn't beat the live interactive human to human experience. No way.
No way. Well, thank you so
No.
much for giving me your presence and your just inspirational just energy. I've really enjoyed this conversation, and thank you everyone for listening and or watching, whatever you've decided to do. Yeah, and stay tuned for the next one. I'll then record and we can wave goodbye to the audience, and then we'll do a checkup chat. So bye. Bye. Bye.